This is Willpower.
In the last couple of years, multiple members of our team have been able to invert their genetic age.
Welcome to the Willpower Podcast. I'm your host, Kristin Weitzel. Together, we explore health optimization tools that propel you from comfort to courage, illuminating the path together to a remarkable life through breath, cold, and biohacking. Here we go with Wade Lightheart of BIOptimizers, who has some amazing information to share. Wade was in one of my single-digit podcasts not so long ago. Well, a little bit of a time span ago. One of the first connection points I had in the longevity space to show up on the podcast and share wisdom and knowledge. And he is here and back again to share even more. We talk about medicinal mushrooms. We talk about midlife. We talk about his latest and greatest product line and feats that he's been doing in his life, including after 12 years, entering himself into first a bodybuilding competition and then a marathon, how to boost your metabolism for the reals, not some of the fluffy, fuzzy stuff we're seeing on Instagram and social media, but really what is metabolism, how we can make the needle move, the power of muscle on our bodies, and a whole slew of things that I just know he always gets a chance to share with us, a big, good philosophy around health, fitness, and longevity, and why it's so exciting to lean into the future of our lifespan. Here we go with Wade Lightheart. So welcome to the Willpower Podcast. Let's lean in.
Yeah, thanks for getting me back. It's nice because it's been a few years since we did the first one, and of course we circle around the same events, but it's like you've got so much going on. It's exciting to reconnect and kind of go over some of the things that's transpired over the last little while.
Yeah, and the listeners are really in store for a treat today. I know always, because we talk about the things in the health landscape that really matter, practical advice. And then I said to you earlier before we started recording, I always get a little bit of good philosophy on life from you. So that's always an extra win, an added value that you bring to the table, because the way that you approach life and you approach the world is always so inspiring to me. Ever since we sat on that panel together where you were like, this is how it's going to be, folks. Everybody needs to lean into this philosophy. And people were like, yes. They're ready for it. So yeah. It was really nice, because sometimes the people go, no, but we were all bought in on a lot of the conversation around optimization. I think I want to open because I'm excited to talk about this, because we get to a place in midlife. I have a lot of listeners who are, dealing with the longevity thing and getting older and saying, how much can I do? And I also have some people who show up, Wade, believe it or not, and say to me, I just turned 35. It's all downhill from here.
Right.
And I want to dispel that myth, because it's crazy. And the most amazing thing I'd love you to share about is a bit about how you stepped back into, correct me if I'm wrong, competition after 12 years of a break.
Yeah. So I'll start there, and I'm going to correlate my own journey with people who are heading into middle age, going into middle age, unsure about something's happening, things aren't working, etc., whatever that happens to be. And so there'll be lessons that we'll key on when I kind of articulate what transpired. So long story short, I was turning 50 and I was like, okay, I haven't done a bodybuilding or a fitness competition, like that sort of thing, since 2007. This is like a long time, 12, 13 years. And I thought, okay, I need to demonstrate that I can reach a high level of cosmetic performance, because essentially bodybuilding is a cosmetic sport that has some advantages that translate over into metabolic optimization and longevity, because bodybuilders have figured out two things that everybody's in this kind of like weird debate about, and that is how to lose body fat and how to build muscle. They've mastered it. Now, the caveat is, and both of those, a healthy body fat percentage and more muscle as opposed to less muscle, both are great for reducing all-causes mortality as well as increasing quality of life. Now, bodybuilders get a bad rap, but they own that rap, is that they get to suboptimal body fat levels. In other words, they take that evolutionary bias to store body fat and invert it. And they take the benefits of muscle and push it to an excess where it can actually compromise the health of the person. It's like, walking around at 275 pounds. Most of that is achieved through drug agents. In other words, they're using hormonal cocktails, which, by the way, all of the longevity stuff now that's put forward by doctors, the early science was developed by bodybuilders and fitness competitors and stuff. So bodybuilders and fitness competitors solved the body fat issue. They solved the muscle building issue, but they also were part of the group that, excessively pushed those into suboptimal levels of sub-health. So they were into performance, but not health. We're looking at performance and health. And that's what I was like, well, how do I demonstrate that what I advocate and what we represent and what we are trying to create a shared vision as a possibility for other people is, what does middle age and older age start to look like? And so I said, well, I have to be a living example. So I decided to go back into competition and see what would happen.
And it behooves us, it's important to say, I think, that you, even in your early years, although you say genetically it was all against you, but you still were winning some, that you were doing natural bodybuilding. So you weren't using the cocktails and the gear. Yeah.
Well, that's a key element, because even in the biohacking space, when you get a lot of the most famous experts out there talking about what's happening with their latest diet thing or their latest supplement or their latest whatever, they're not revealing the host of bioidentical hormones and other drugs that may be in that mix that's influencing the outcome. So, the user listens to that person. They're not taking bioidentical hormones. They're not, doing all this sort of stuff, and they don't get the results. And they're like, why? What's happening? Well, if you put me on steroids or even testosterone replacement therapy for 3 months, I will absolutely destroy Wade of the 3 months before.
Yeah.
It's not even comparatively close.
Yeah.
So I said, and I'm not against people doing that. I'm just like, let's give an honest assessment. So I used my own journey. Now, what I can say this, at 50 years old, I would get in shape for a bodybuilding contest in my 30s, somewhere between 12 and 20 weeks. That would be the time frame. To get ready for my show in my 50s, it was more like 12 to 18 months. So it was about 12 months to the first show, and then 18 months till I went back to the Mr. Universe, or Mr. Natural Miss Olympia, which I did those things. So that's what I can say. It's slower as you're older, especially when you're not augmenting with hormones and doing all this stuff, but it's achievable. And if you look at my physique at 50 versus my physique at 31, the only major difference is a little bit of leg size and a little, and the skin is not as tight as it used to be. Those two elements, and largely in part, I didn't take care of my skin, and I have suboptimal skin genetics. Welcome to being like northern blonde hair, blue eyed with thin skin, and that's just life. Okay, so that's fine. However, I would say on some areas I had, like, for example, in my legs, I had better conditioning than, say, maybe in the past. So, and part of that was because I had incorporated a different level of cardiovascular. I started to take up running. And after the contest, I did a marathon 6 months later.
Which is like totally the opposite.
Correct.
The opposite. Like bodybuilders are now like, let me go do a tri or a marathon. It's like the polar opposite training mechanism.
Right. So I can get to the world championships. I can't win the world championships. And that's partly genetics. A big part of it, actually. There's just people, like, it's like, I'm not going to star as a center of the NBA. Doesn't matter how much I train. Like, these are realities that you are dealing with at the highest levels. But I can learn a lot of things from them and then translate that over to our listeners. So I did the marathon because I'm a goal-oriented guy. And I knew that as you age, so if you were to break down aging into how do you live long and strong, number one, you want to build as much muscle as possible in the first half of your life. Because after 40, building muscle becomes much more difficult. And I would say after 35 starts to get much tougher, but 35, 40, that's typically it. Then the second phase is you need to really work on your cardiovascular health. That's brain protective. That creates energy levels for mitochondria. Peter Attia does great work in regards to demonstrating why that's so important. So you really want to focus on that triangle base he talks about, not only your threshold, but your endurance over time and your lactate threshold and stuff. So I said, I'm going to go run a marathon, because I knew if I had to run a marathon, I got to show up and do this, and I'd have to push myself. So I did it, and I ran a marathon just to.
Now, have you ever run a marathon before?
Never.
Have you ever?
No.
Okay.
No.
Just to give context. Yeah.
Yeah. Hadn't ran since high school. So, yeah, I did it, and it was awesome. It was just over 4 hours. I got ready for it in 6 months. I ran a half marathon in 4 months, and I used a couple different augmentation aspects in regard the ad cell trainer, atmospheric cellular trainer or whatever.
Like a CVAC or like a cell trainer?
Yeah.
CVAC.
Yeah,
I love the CVAC. So hard to get our hands on it. It's only in a few specific places.
The CVAC is without a doubt an absolute game changer on oxygen carrying capacity. For sure. That was a big iteration. And then, of course, using cold therapy to reduce inflammation and stuff like that. And then I did that, as well as lymphatic drainage, because I don't have the best lymphatic system. So using the air compressors to move the lymph out of the body. So again, some of those recovery elements are unique to my genetics, and some are also just concordant with the type of training. So can I minimize the negative effects of training really hard at 50 and boost my recovery? Those, I think selecting biohacks on top of supplements are important. So it all worked out, and it was very good.
And
so
I just
got
want
my
to say,
cardio.
I love this because we are more and more talking about exactly what you're talking about in the world, and you being one of the leaders in this space is recovery. I just gave a talk in Finland that was like, you're only as fit as what you can recover from. If you're not doing compression and drainage and all these, stacking these things on top to the best of your ability for what access you have, then you are not really getting yourself as fit because you are not as recovered. So I love that you're speaking about this. Beautiful.
Yeah, and that is the big difference as you age. Your high end output is not as high, and the duration that it takes for you to get back to another training session is longer. So not as high and takes longer. So I would say, like getting in shape took me longer. Recovering from my workouts took longer. But these adjuncts that you can do can turn back the clock. So I was able to hit a high level of performance relative to where I was in my 30s. And I've never had the cardiovascular health back then that I have now in my 50s. And so there's wins to be had. And I think the important, if you will, philosophical framework that a person can adapt as they get older is not so much I'm going to look like I was 20. I think that's a game of diminishing returns. I think the better game is how good can I feel in the second half of life? And what do I need to do to that? And so you're comparing against, so for me, doing the cardiovascular was an absolute lifetime win. So it was better than any time I'd ever been in my life, which was really inspiring. I think that someone that decides to go go do a fitness competition or a bodybuilding competition for the first time, not so that you can be on stage to win the contest. That happens, wonderful. But so that you understand how much power you have to actually manipulate your metabolism. And three, if you put yourself in an extreme condition, like go run a marathon, go do an Ironman, or go do that external event maybe that you've never done before, and then subjecting yourself to that level of discipline in order to achieve that, you'll start to recognize that what you can achieve is far greater than you might have thought, or your framework. The other thing is you're going to get insights directly into the things that work for you and don't, because on that higher end performance, the feel, what your awareness about how you feel becomes enhanced. And then number three, you redefine what's possible for you and your peers. And what typically happens is that becomes inspirational for the people around you. And they're like, wow, if Kristin can do it, I can do it. If Wade can do it, maybe I should try something. And that spreads. And we're looking at BIOptimizers to build a new paradigm for health, how to live long, how to live strong for a life essentially well lived. And being physically strong and having mobility and the ability to engage with your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, and impart decades of wisdom to them because you have the cognitive capability, the physical vitality, and you've lived long enough for them to actually be able to comprehend what you're sharing with them. The massive value that has to you, your family, your society, your perspective, your sense of joy, your sense of purpose, your sense of aspect of contribution is what I believe represents the ultimate expression of living your best human. Like, we don't all have to be the world famous person or the most successful or the richest or the fittest or the most ripped or the strongest or the biggest thing, but we can be a better version of ourselves, and that has a trickle down effect.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And that's just like, it's an epic thing that you did as well. And you have the background experience to do it, but just leaning in and proof positing the point to people that in midlife, we can do hard things, right? I say this all the time when I'm speaking to people about cold or speaking to people about transitioning their state by using breath work and overcoming emotional anxiety and issues that are arising. And also it takes leaders like you to be able to say, hey, I'm just going to get up and do it. And I can only imagine how challenging the cardio thing was for you cerebrally as well. Like, you're a thoughtful guy. And also it's like, shit, I have to do, I want to do this, part of my purpose. I'm going to transfer everything that I know from my fitness mindset, but I'm going to go to this cardiovascular thing, which is so off the beaten path compared to what your past experience has provided, that it must have been, you're like, okay, I'm doing the damn thing. And then you're like, okay, I have to do it every day because I said I'm going to do it and I'm a leader in the space. And I would imagine that some, roadblocks or fears or, I think what I also want to just mention or ask you is over the course of weaving something like that cardiovascular, that marathon training in, what and how did you sort of shift your mindset that you think like at this stage of your life gave you some more chops to, shift yourself into something that, because that's a beginner's mindset. Because something that you really haven't done, like you said, since high school. And then also for the people that are listening, I think that there's we see this sometimes where people are like a little too hot out of the gate. And they're like, I'm going to just start running 5 to 12 miles week one. It just, how do we mitigate those things from happening and sort of keep a mindset that's going to be like long haul, fresh, got it.
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that question because first off, I remember the first couple of weeks of running. It wasn't good.
It wasn't good.
No, it wasn't. It was tough. It was really hard. And I remember first starting out, and I started out running on a treadmill. And the reason I did that is because I knew there was a cushion and I knew there was a pace. So I started that for a little bit. And I was getting a little bit of knee pain and some hip pain and stuff. But I'm, just struggling through like, first trying to run for 15 minutes and then trying to go for, I had to learn to pace myself because in bodybuilding, you're done in 30 to 60 seconds, right? The exercise is done. You're toast. So you're all out and it's like, oh, okay. So then I realized, okay, I started at a walking pace. I said, I first started it, I was just sucked. And then I'm like, okay, I got to start at a walking pace on the treadmill and then kind of just slowly up the dosage so I could get my heart rate into an aerobic mindset. So I really had to shift my whole physiology, my mentality. And then that allowed me to go 30 minutes. Okay, so now I'm going to go for 30 minutes, but the first 8, 9, 10 are pretty slow walking and increasing the tension and increasing. So then I keep going and then, and then I would just slowly move up the pace as I'm going along until I couldn't keep the pace anymore. And then it was like, that was okay. And then I taper down and then I would experiment with different things because I could say, okay, if I start out running this, how long do I last? If I start out slower, and I started to notice that if I started out slower and built up, I had much more endurance than if I came out of the gate hard. Then came a run, particularly, I said, okay, now I got to get ready for the road. So I did that a few. So I said, okay, I'm going to go run on the Venice Beach. Not on the beach part, but just on the paved part. Because, I said, I need to recreate the conditions I'll be running on in the marathon. And I went for this run, and I'm doing pretty good on, like I'm getting a little better in the cardio, right? I still suck, but I'm feeling like I'm making some progress. And I'm running down the beach, and I get this massive pain in my knee, like in my right knee. And it's just radiating down my leg and into my knee, and it's hurting like hell. I'm only like a couple miles into this little tiny run. I think I was running about 4 miles. I'm like halfway. Maybe a little better than half. And, you're 50, this sucks, what are you doing? You're going to damage yourself. What happens if you wreck your leg? Blah, 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 blah. And I thought of Jocko Willink. And I said, what would Jocko do if his leg was hurting and falling off? He'd just keep running. And so that's what I did. I just kept running because I said, no, there's a misalignment in my physiology here because I haven't run, and I haven't run in a paved environment, and I can give into my body, or I could tell my body, I'm going to do this with or without you. So get in line. And therefore, encouraging my body to realign properly so I wasn't getting pain in my knee. So the first day I hobbled through it. It came up again a few days later. It was a little bit less. It came up again, I think, another session right after that, like the next session. And then after that, it didn't come up again.
And there's something to be said for that, for sure.
Right? Yeah, there was something that happened there. And I think some of it was the awareness of physiology and recognizing tightness in the body, and that was probably creating the tension. It wasn't like a bone-on-bone thing, although it felt like it. And just going a little bit further and using an avatar in my mind, a mentor, a person that would encourage me. I used to do that in bodybuilding. I used to imagine I was training with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and would I do another rep, or if I could get $1 million for this rep, would I do it? Or if this would save somebody I loved, could I get another rep? And you have to create these mental gymnastics with yourself to just win the next moment, win the next moment. Try not to get too far down the road. And then all of a sudden you get momentum. And then after about probably 6 weeks, I started to enjoy running. And I was like, oh, and then I remember the first time I got like runner's high. And I just felt like I could keep going. And it was a beautiful sunset on Venice Beach, and I'm running. And I had been watching runners for a couple of years, watching them go down the beach. Think, God, that's so impressive. These people running, and I see all kinds of bad runners and everything. Like they're so good. Like I'm so impressed with all these people. And finally, I realized I can be a runner too. And that was an extraordinary feeling, which I hadn't had since I was a kid. And running became a pleasurable experience. And then when your exercise or your goal becomes pleasurable, and and you get all the benefits for doing something that you love and feel good about. And I think that's the ultimate place to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing I want to highlight is really this is the patience of progress, right? There really is. We're such a quick fix society. I think the waiting game, I know, like I just started a new training bout, just working out strength and conditioning to try to like sort of level up again, because I was 6 months in a van, and no matter how many Planet Fitnesses I went to, it's just not enough. You like sleeping and driving, and you're on your butt just driving windshield time. And so I'm like, okay, great, I need to lean in. And I know specifically, and maybe a few years back, and now I hold on to this philosophy, which is like, it's a 4-month window for me. It's a 4-month training program before I get to celebrate, or before I get to, for me, I say, before I get to give myself any negative self-talk, it's 4 months. Like just knowing that there's some patience we have to have with our own bodies, and that we will maybe notice it a little bit before other people. But then it almost happens, like you talked about this 6-week mark where you hit runner's high. It's almost like, then there's just a moment and you're like, oh, dang, there it is. And that's the waiting sort of makes the journey sweeter, right? It's like the Spanisbogen, they say in Dune. It's the Spanisbogen is like the waiting for the thing to happen. This is the point of the journey, right? There's all the things you learn along the way. And the other really beautiful thing is that and talking about mindset and talking about what the yogis call samskara, or these grooves in our brain that just keep saying, oh, I'm too old, or I can't do this thing, or I'm not good enough, or like that mile looks harder, or this person over here is running next to me is faster. And I did, when I was at the Ohio State University, I did a little bit of a training program around triathlons too, kind of knowing I may be coaching it and coaching people who wanted to do personal, tries and whatnot. And I was like, let me do a little bit of this training to feel like, get a bicycle, ride for a year, get a swim on, which was still is kind of my weakest sport, and then get running on. And I remember in the beginning of Running Weed that I was like training according to a coach that I was working with, and he was giving me really slow paced runs because I wasn't good. I didn't have that kind of cardio, that kind of maybe even ankle strength. And I would be like running so slow that there'd be like little old ladies out, fast walking at night and being like, I'm like pacing with them, but it's the patience and progress that got me to then, and like you talked about on the treadmill, getting into a gear that felt like I can grow my endurance, I can grow it, because it can feel daunting when you first start. So especially coming from someone like you, to hear that for audience members, because I don't have the professional sport background that you do, and it's so exciting. So you ended up doing this competition at the end of 12 months, and then what happened in 18 months? You got pulled into the next level. Well,
yeah, what happened is I went and won the Ironman International, a contest that I used to watch as a little kid. And that was really cool. So I won that. I won the overall men's, which was wild because I had guys like half my age in that one. I was like crazy. So that qualified me for the Natural Olympia professional version. So I literally, you're a professional athlete at 50 years old, which was bizarre. And so I went to that event and in Las Vegas, and it was fantastic. There was some absolutely exquisite physiques at all ages. And what was remarkable is how many people in their 40s and 50s and 60s were competing. Some of those classes were actually bigger than the regular classes. And at the natural event, I thought that was really interesting. That wasn't the case of things 20, 30 years ago.
Yep. Did you have less nerves too? Were you like, you're older, you go with like a sense of like fun and joy and experience and hanging out, and you're not, on the edge?
I was never anyone to get super anxious about competing. I'm not really built that way. I think I've always seen performances, what people label as fear and anxiety, I label as a heightened sense of awareness. So that increase of neurochemicals that's released at those moments, people interpret, I think, incorrectly. They see them as anxious, or they see them as frenetic, or they see them as like, no, you're just not used to dealing with this level of energy of yourself, and you got to attenuate to it. And so I was just more excited and had some family there, and we did a whole bunch of filming and stuff. Now, I totally got destroyed in the contest, just for people to know. I remember going backstage and seeing this fellow, Tommy Thompson, who won the event. I mean, I walked backstage and I see this guy and I'm like, I just walked up and said, hey, congratulations, you won the show. Like, it was over. It was over before, like, there's no comebacks in bodybuilding. There's nothing.
Before it started, you're like, just so you know.
No, he did not have to hit a pose. This guy looks so good. This guy was like the natural version of Ronnie Coleman or something. He had an absolute tremendous physique. And so I just introduced myself, said, well, congratulations. And we all went on stage and competed, and that was fine. And he won, and that was it. Like, it was really, and it came off, and went and had fun with my friends, and then set the next goal for running a marathon. And so that worked out, and I got the benefits of cardiovascular growth. And I can feel the difference. In fact, I took a little bit of time off after that marathon, because the marathon kicked my butt. That was hard. The wall is real, and I got all torched up on that one, which was interesting. And I took a little bit of time off, and then when I started to come back, I saw the drop off cognitively in not running versus running. I could feel it, because we monitor cognitive health really clearly. My fiance is a taking her PhD in neurofeedback, biocybernaut. I did a bunch of 40 years of Zen. I've been to Peak Brain Institute.
I love Peak Brain. Yeah, I've had him on the podcast, Andrew Hill.
Yeah. Now we're crafting our own neurofeedback, which we do with our executives, and we have a very elaborate, intensive program that we put together, because I don't know of anything else that gives you better gains. And what's really cool is when I did a neurofeedback exam, oh man, it would be 6 years ago, which led to the creation of magnesium breakthrough. Okay. I had a brain at that time where I was under a lot of stress and disorder and stuff that was like a 70-year-old man. Like I was getting no neural connection. And I felt like I wasn't sleeping well. I had a lot of anxiousness, which I don't normally experience. Like I was like worried about things in the business, and physiologically was challenging. And I was, aggressive, like, everything's a threat. It was in that threat detection mode when you're overstressed. And we started using magnesium, and that was magnesium breakthrough. We got that to stabilize the neurochemistry and the physiology, which magnesium is so critical in. And then we sold a product, and that went really great. But then we went to the next level. We started doing mushroom products because we wanted the brain-derived nootropic factor. And Matt and I at that time were also losing our short-term memory, which is not uncommon as you get to middle age. And I talked to a leading expert in mushrooms who's like, oh, you need like 3 grams of lion's mane a day will correct that. I'm like, are you kidding me? So I started doing 3 grams of lion's mane a day. And within a couple of weeks, I noticed massive improvements in my short-term memory. I'm like, holy cow, this really works. So then I went bananas in the whole mushroom, neurocognitive enhancement, and discovered a couple of cool things. One, our brains are like our digestive system, for example, is an internalized version of what fungi, which lead to mushrooms, does, or mycelium. And mycelium creates a neural network in the ground that connects the trees and the grass and everything. So underneath everything you see is this massive mycelium network that's super complex. And guess what it works like? It works like our brain. And we have a brain-gut connection. Well, isn't that interesting? And a mushroom is just the fruit of this whole aspect. Just like a feeling or a thought is a product of our digestive and nervous system leading up to the brain center. So there's actually correlations. We actually broke evolutionary stuff about 300,000 years ago or something like that, according to 300 million, it might be. Yeah, 300 million, I think. Yeah, 300 million years ago. And this internal, external. And so I started working with an expert in nootropics, Mark Effinger. He's kind of like a polymath.
Yeah, he's been on the show. He might as well be a doctor. He's such a nerd. Yeah.
He's he's built lasers and exercise bikes and like tech companies and he's just a delight to be around. Anyways, we started using combinations of mushrooms and correlating it with our neurofeedback training and seeing that we had better duration, we get better results, faster results, and less feeling of fatigue and stress by using mushrooms in highly concentrated dosages. And I think that's a big aspect, that's a whole other topic, get into it, and starting seeing the cognitive benefits of that. And so that was really powerful, because when you're doing neurofeedback, you're rewiring your brain, just like mycelium goes through an environment and rewires their brains.
Yeah, giving your brain the growth potential. Yeah. And then what I love about the mushroom breakthrough, which I'm using with so many clients, is it's just easy because it's got collagen, it's got other things in it, and it's like one scoop easy. You don't have to think a lot about it. Whereas beforehand, before that came out, I was like using like packets that were like just reishi or just lion's mane or just chaga or just cordyceps, and I was religiously using reishi at night. And then it was like, well, if I put reishi in my coffee, if I'm not doing caffeine anymore, but back then I was like, hey, reishi in the coffee, it stunts that caffeine spike so that I could have a normal morning instead of like getting all sweaty and over caffeinated, because I'm pretty sensitive to caffeine. So all-in-one is the thing that really helps, I think, or just it makes it easy, right? This is what I'm always trying to do for the women and men now, even that I'm working with. It's like bring on the things that are simple so that we can just add them into our lifestyle. Like this morning, I made a tea-based cacao with a little bit of that in it, and it just made a really nice hot cup in the morning, even though it's like 900 degrees here in Austin. I love a warm beverage in the morning.
Yeah, no doubt. I think just to adjunct to that, because I know you're into the cold therapy, you're one of the leaders in that area. We in our brain training, we would do the cold therapy, right? Subject yourselves to that, then come out and we'd make hot mushroom breakthrough, right? And then we do the breathing, kind of holotropic breathing and stuff like that. And so we do the cold, the breathing, and the mushrooms. And this, how your brain lights up under neurofeedback it's really impressive what happens when you stack those things. So it's a nice combination that really works well. And people who try it go, wow, like, okay, I get what you're into. And so it's really fun.
You feel like a demigod. You're like, all right, let's go. I got the world in my fingertips. Yeah, really beautiful.
Our plates are full. People are stressed to the max. Really, I'm feeling it. Are you feeling that lately? A lot of hormonal imbalance, a lot of conversation about my hormones are out of whack, they're imbalanced, I'm not sleeping well, I'm stressed out. And I did a solo episode on this mineral that is so, so important. It is game-changing to help you feel your best, and that's magnesium. So you can go listen to that solo-sode, and the reality is magnesium is an absolute must for keeping your hormones balanced and your body functioning optimally. Most of us are not getting enough of it from our diets alone, and that's why I'm here to remind you, yes, you need to take a supplement. And yes, the one that I take is BIOptimizers Magnesium Breakthrough, and it is by far the best. I've been using it personally for 6 years. I use it with all of my clients. It is so, so important because it has 7 different types of magnesium, the best ones, all in one capsule. Now, I'm taking 2 at night before I go to sleep because I got a little extra stress going on. But when you manage your sleep, your digestive health, and your stress, your hormones can rebalance. So I want you to support your system by using Magnesium Breakthrough by BIOptimizers. BIOptimizers.com, BIOptimizers.com/wellpower, or you can use the code WellPower10 to save a little money, to support this podcast, and mostly to support your hormone balance, your sleep, and your stress. BIOptimizers.com. Check it out.
I want to shift the conversation a little bit to metabolism because there's so much conversation around this still, Wade, and there's so much that you know about it. And people always asking me, like in my intake form, it's like, what are your goals? They're like, I want to speed up my metabolism, period. I want my metabolism. You know, I do speak and dive in about metabolic flexibility because there's so many people who have glucose issues and challenges and whatnot. But just really, I think it'd be great to get a little like 201 on the notion of metabolism and also the things that we can do to continue to bolster it. Because I think there's a bit of a misunderstanding in the world. Do you see that? You're like, I live it.
A little bit of information is a dangerous thing. Extraction from a clinical paper does not necessarily translate into the real world. And cognitive bias by your environmental influences is much more significant than people imagine. And all of that gets baked into this metabolism conversation. So let's talk, what is metabolism? We have to determine what we're talking. The metabolism, from usually if someone's talking about, I want to improve my metabolism, what they're really saying is it seems like I am gaining body fat and not looking as good as I used to when I used to get away with a bunch of things in the past. And now I can't get away with them anymore. So when I was 20, I could eat whatever I want and I looked great and I'd go out drinking and I felt fine and I cut out the drinking and I really got my diet down and I'm still getting fatter and I don't know what's going on. That's a summary of what most people call metabolism. Okay? And that's not metabolism. Metabolism is how much energy you are burning on a day-to-day basis, which is correlated with your exercise, how much exercise you're doing in a day, what's your basal metabolic rate, which is relative to your lean body mass. So your lean body mass combined with your basic metabolic rate, which there is some variance, and inside of basic metabolic rate, hormones and drugs do impact that, okay, of all sorts. And then 3, what is your activity level? So those are the parameters that you can play with. And all of the dialogue is really manipulating those things. So essentially, are you burning more calories than you're consuming? You will lose body fat. If that burn rate is correlated to some sort of muscle building activity, you may maintain or add a little muscle to your body.
And we love muscle because it burns more calories at rest and builds to longevity.
Correct. And if it's, and the other thing is, and then the third thing is what is your relative strength of hormones, which is actually also connected to how much body fat you have. As you lose body fat, your hormone profile tends to improve. Now, what are the adjuncts that people are doing? Well, number one, which is really common in the biohacking place and the space and not talking about it, all these guys that are on TRT or the girls that are on hormone replacement. Not to throw that under the bus, but if you're taking the dietary advice of someone who is using those things and you are not going to get the same results as them. You're setting yourself up for failure.
Well, and people who are young are even layering in these hormones. I think that's important to layer on, is like 25-year-olds are using growth hormone or other hormones. Guys are going on T, women are going on, there are some cases where I will see a woman online and I'm like, how is she that big? And it's like, because she's adding more hormones exogenously into her system, which is like, and young women who, I'm sure that there's side effects and all that, but, who are looking for physique training. So it bodes to be said, this isn't just people who are like, my hormones are waning, I'm 50, 60 years old. This is people at a very young age starting these processes.
Yes. So what you did in your 20s can't be undone. In other words, there was the laws of entropy applied at that time. So I was a wild man. I partied like crazy. I drank. I did a bunch of drugs. I was like, total maniac. And then I got to a point where it didn't. And so there was some damage done, and I was able to regenerate from that damage. I would say probably even go beyond what the damage was. But if I hadn't have done those things and gone forward, I would probably be even in a better state than I am now, but I did it. So I can't accept. So you have to accept the responsibility of what you did in the past and said, well, it seemed like a good idea at the time, and here's where I'm at. The second thing, inside of what you were doing, there are hangover habits that are continuing on, not following a proper dietary program, not eating a diet that manages satiety. So feeling full is a critical aspect of long-term success, and how you feel full through strategic eating, where you have lots of fiber or lots of protein. Those are really the two full factors that don't disrupt your metabolism or add excessive calories into that, and eating a dietary regimen that fits your lifestyle. And then what is your exercise component? Now, those three things you can manipulate. You can manipulate your accountability. You can manipulate the type of training that you do, and you can manipulate the type of diet that will give you the result. I wrote a whole big, thick book. I don't have it here because I just moved to a new place. It's called the Ultimate Nutrition Bible, where Matt and I break down all the different major dietary strategies. So it's not it's not keto versus paleo or vegetarianism versus raw foodism, or, that's losing sight of the picture. You can do well on any one of those diets. One of those diets would be more suitable to your genetics and lifestyle and preferences. We have a whole hierarchy, and it includes spirituality and psychology and emotionally that you got to factor in. Because if you're going against something against your religion or against your social culture or your value system, or doesn't feed and honor the way you're emotionally made up, you're going to fail. Because it's not going to work, because there's an old saying, it's hard for a zebra to lose its stripes. Well, you're pretty much baked in as a person, and you just learn to mitigate your suboptimal parts of your life, and then you learn to enhance the optimal parts of your life. That's really aging. And so to get around that whole metabolism aspect,
And where can people find the book if they're interested in getting the book?
Yeah, just go to the Ultimate Nutrition Bible. They can get it at Barnes & Noble. They can get it on Amazon, or they can get it at BIOptimizers. If you go to BIOptimizers, you can get the Ultimate Nutrition System. And that has everything done in videos and audios. And it's got a whole extra nutritional supplement book that helps you determine what every nutritional supplement. You'll know more than anybody at the store when you go in and ask that. Like, we got all these cool things. There's adjuncts so that you can really.
I remember your first video series, and I was like, damn, this is amazing. And it was like, I bought a few things and got it for free. It was like, this is amazing. So it's always worth the investment. You guys put so much energy and knowledge into the basis of everything you're doing with BIOptimizers. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think for developing that, to go back to the metabolism thing, you want muscle mass is king, period. It's king for metabolism. It's king for longevity. It's king for feeling good. Most people between 2 and 4 weight training sessions or resistance exercise, there's a lot of different forms now that they have all these unique ways. Those 2 things are going to be really, really cool. 3, cardiovascular health. The exercise in cardiovascular, as far as burning a lot of calories, I don't think it's as effective as weight training. I think that it tends to increase hunger. That was one of the things I noticed. The more I ran, the hungrier I got. So I literally, so here's something crazy, just to give you understanding of metabolism. I'm training way more time when I was getting ready for my marathon. So I go to the bodybuilding competition. I step on stage at 176 pounds on that aspect. I start running. So I'm running and 45 minutes to an hour, 3 days a week, and an hour and 20 to 2 hours once every couple weeks, right? And so I'll have that. So I'm doing 4 sessions. So that 4 session would vary anywhere from like a little over an hour to up to 2 hours. When I ran the marathon, I was 187 or 88 pounds. I gained weight doing cardiovascular exercise. Not just like, and when I did it, yes, I remember exactly. It was 189 pounds because I was 13.3 pounds that I gained during that time. And every single pound of it was body fat. So going to the gym and doing excessive cardio is a recipe for disaster. Doing enough cardio to get the cardiovascular benefits, Peter Attia's version has it nailed better than anybody else. Follow what he says. It'll work. But don't do it to an excess where, because I found I was always hungry.
Right. So it's almost like the caloric intake is what's bolstering that.
Yeah. And I didn't know how to manage the blood sugar side of the endurance training relative. I had it down for bodybuilding, but then all of a sudden I needed a lot more calories. I'm running all this stuff. And then I would have a tendency to overeat. And that's typically what people do if they don't have satiety, if they don't regulate their blood sugar, if their ratios of carbohydrates, proteins, and fats are off for their body. There's an optimal level for each person, and you got to dial that in. And if you don't, you're going to do what I did, and you're going to gain weight with your exercise program. Gain body fat. I don't mind gaining weight if it's muscle mass. But so that was a unique discovery that I made, and then I course corrected and got it figured out.
And then then you get a chance to sort of share your story with people, so they're like, okay, great, because it's the context of the sport that's going to shift what your body's doing, like what energy system you're burning from, and the fact that you're not actually lifting when you're putting all those miles in. Did you do low profile shoes? Like, how did you make a shoe choice for yourself?
Oh yeah, I did. So I ran in a 5-degree drop on the road, which was determined by my chiropractor, and then I would run a couple times a week on the treadmill in a 0 drop. So I would run my faster sessions on the 0 drop because I tended to be on my toes, and on the longer runs, which is on a pavement type thing, I would put the 5-degree drop to take some of the cushion from the kind of long pounding. So those, and I had the shoes from a shoe store that I'm done with the insoles. So, because what was happening, that was the other thing. What was causing some of the knee roll is I was rotating my foot a little bit on one side over the other, and then that was putting tension on that. And when I put the new shoes in, that eliminated. However, when I started running in the 0 drops on my toes and running that kind of that style that you read the book, Born to Run style, as they call it, then I like that movement better than running in the other ones. The problem was in a long-term race, I couldn't do that kind of pounding on my feet because I hadn't ran barefoot all my life. Like
some people like Born to Run. Yeah.
Yeah. Like they've developed the whole structure around that to do. So I mixed those two elements together.
We're taking a moment to talk toothpaste, people, because here's what's going on. I've been using this toothpaste from Silver Biotics for 2 years. I love it. It's incredible. I've been sharing it with friends. I brought it to my retreat for 22 people. Everyone got a tube of toothpaste. I'm stoked. They make a toothpaste. They make a tooth gel. The gel is a little like lighter mint flavor called glacial mint. The toothpaste has a rockin' winter mint flavor. My gums have never been so pink. I never felt so healthy. My teeth and my smile is shiny and clean. Natural whitening agents are in there. Everything is clean in the product. And I read this study recently that has a list of all the toxic ingredients that are in most commonly used toothpaste and mouthwashes in the United States, like sodium lauryl sulfate and betaine and desensitizers and anti-plaque agents and anti-odor agents and preservatives and artificial colors. And all of these things in this study are like toxic. They have toxic effects on the human body. And we are brushing our teeth twice a day, every day, hopefully, for 2 minutes at a clip. And we need to be using something that's good for us, that's clean ingredients. This is our mouth, our body, our friends, our family, our kiddos are brushing their teeth every day. So look up Silver Biotics. They're at silverbiotics.com. They are my favorite. I've called them. I've chatted with them. I am getting you a discount, 30% off. That's incredible. 30% off. That's no joke. Use the code WellPower. They make a whole slew of immune supplement mouthwashes and toothpaste and tooth gels and on and on and on. 30% off anything off their site. Silverbiotics.com. That's silverbiotics.com. Use the code WellPower and wake up with a bright, shiny smile. Kiss your partner. Brush your teeth. Go out with your friends. Breathe on everybody. Enjoy it. Silver Biotics.
What's coming next for you and for BIOptimizers? I want to just give there's a little recap that I would say is like the hot ticket items I like of what I'm using. I mean, Magnesium Breakthrough has been in the arsenal for so long, and I could not. I mean, I recommend it to everyone. All my clients are on it. I'm on it forever and ever. And it's been so helpful with sleep and stress and just really navigating my entire life because it's such an important element for us to have in our bodies. Recovery as well, like you mentioned. Blood sugar breakthrough and this mushroom breakthrough. All of the breakthroughs, I like that you're calling them breakthroughs, which are really helpful. Again, leaning a bit into the whole Nootropics side, which it's fun, like before a podcast or before a social event to kind of get me prepped and ready. But what are the big wins that are happening right now? And can you give us a little sneak on what's coming next?
Yeah. Okay. So why we created these breakthrough products is largely in part, we were able to use science to create breakthroughs in our lab. And we do that through, number one, we have the ability to test beyond lab assays. So people just go by lab assay. It's got 80% of this, 20% of this, 50, whatever, or it doesn't have these contaminants. But when you actually put that into a lab testing into a digestive system, so you've recreated a digestive system in the lab, you'll find out that many of these things aren't bioactive. They don't impact the bacteria culture. And the bacteria culture actually take what you consume and convert it into building blocks, energy units, antioxidants, all kinds of cool things. Right. And magnesium is what big game changer in that. When you add magnesium, just even a tiny amount to everything, it just seems to turbocharge everything. I won't go into all the mechanisms, but it's definable. And then this next thing is does it actually get delivered to the cell? So we have special microscopes. We can actually see the stuff actually going into the cells and things like that. And so what that allows us to do is to find, number one, the best raws in the market that are beyond what you might think from a lab assay. Number two, to see, do they work in the digestive tract? And number three, do they get delivered to the cells as we would hope? So are they bioavailable and accessible? We also test for cytotoxicity and genotoxicity. Does this ingredient or this combination create, problems that people can't handle? And so that gives us a superior capability to create formulations in a product category that are almost, it's almost a mathematical certainty that someone else trying to even copy the same ingredients could do that unless they have the same lab. And there's very few companies that have a lab like us.
Yeah, and I saw the most beautiful thing that I don't know how I missed this statement before, if it's just something I read on a page recently of the site. It's like, there's nothing, people are like, well, eat supplements and they cost money and all the things that people say. Great. But there's nothing more expensive than using a supplement that doesn't work. And it's just like, I read this recently and was like, this is, it's a BIOptimizers page. And I was like, this is the answer. That's the reality is there's so much money being blown on stuff that's not bioavailable or that people are buying on Amazon, or it's not to slight Amazon, but there's so many knockoffs and repackages and all the crap that we see on there. And I'm glad we're sort of having the conversation, because bringing it up to people sometimes is like, really? It's like, well, there's fairy dusting, and then there's like double cost product that has, 2 granules of the thing that works. And so, yeah, nothing more expensive than a supplement you take that doesn't get absorbed into the cell or the body or anything. And that's where you guys, in my mind, even from the days of talking with Mark and talking with Matt, of just hearing about I'm going to call it the ridiculous level that you scrutinize these things. And by ridiculous, I just mean you go further than most anyone else that I have met, because you want the best. And I think you want the best, not just for the consumers, but because all of you are taking all of these things. And so it's like gamifying it to say, how can I make my life, my body, my brain, my power bigger and better than ever, right? For this longevity piece and just for this joy piece. So I'm glad you're talking about your lab. It's pretty cool.
It is. And the reason we had that is because, Matt and I, when we started this company 20 years ago, we didn't have access to a lab, but we got the best people we could to build our first enzyme product, Masszymes, which is going over 20 years now. It's one of the best-selling enzyme products on the world. I do believe it is. We've done 4 different versions, and we found different ways to improve it. So what we learned early on in our career is no matter how good that you make a product, there's always a way to improve it. And then when you deal with the different lab assay companies, we're like, oh, just because it says it's this on a lab assay doesn't mean that it works. So there's a lot of good intentioned companies that only have a lab assay that think that that's the product that's going to work. They don't have access to these other things. So there is the integrity, intention, and then there's the capacity to deliver on that intention. And then there's the humility required to say, well, we don't have it perfect yet, we can make a better version. And so we bake all of that into the product reiteration mode. And it drives our teams crazy, because when we find in the lab that we've got to come out with magnesium 4.0, wow, we got to change the labels. We've got an international problem. There's a shelving space problem. It creates head chaos in the company. But we're like, it's better. So we have a few versions of better coming, just with the limitations of our teams going that way. We can't do better, just like better than the next version yet, because of all this downstream stuff. We got to get everything registered and all that sort of stuff. So we got a couple of those coming, which are really exciting. We've crafted some new molecules that have never been created before with unique properties. I'm not at liberty to discuss, but we will be revealing that soon, because we've just gone through all the trademarking and got the trademark stuff. And some of them, I think, are they're all game-changing molecules. So we have a super chemist that uses AI computers to craft things, and he's understanding of molecular weight and things and what goes where. It's really impressive. Like, it's impressive when you listen to, some really smart people that are really good at this stuff. I'm so humbled by the process. So we got some of that going. And we've identified a massive problem in the electrolyte business. There is a scientific problem with what's being promoted in the electrolyte business.
Oh, I smell controversy on the hill. I love it. I think it's unclear in the market, and if you've solved it, we're all in. That's great.
Yes, we've solved it, and you can feel the difference when you do it. Yeah, so that's a big deal. And that's going to happen. And then we're doing some unique stuff around vitamin D and some fats as well right now that's going to come to fruition in the not too distant future. So the thing is we've got so many cool things that we want to really bring out. We have to bring them out, systematically. So we've got more breakthroughs that we can possibly deliver as a company. And it's one of the fights I always have with Matt. And kudos to Matt on that. Matt's driving innovation more than anybody inside of the company. And Mark's right with him on the Nootopia side. Like those guys are, they just spent a week testing 600 different flavor versions of a product. 600. They did 600 flavor tests.
Wow. That's some dedication. They're just playing guitar at night, and then in the daytime, they're just checking flavor profiles.
Well, they're actually playing guitar and checking profiles at the same time and telling stories and singing songs and, working on their things. It's the creative process is a party. Yeah. For sure.
So fun. And it's always a good time when I get to spend time with all of you. And just since probably the first time I saw you speak was 6-7 years ago in Finland, knowing a little bit about the product line and then just really having me hooked on your intellect and even having the conversation, because I was like, this guy's going to talk about veganism and vegetarianism and being plant-based and how's this going to go? And like all of the eras of you iterating and growing yourself and all of the incredible things you've done since the very first podcast we did, which was one of in the single digits for this podcast. And now we're just about to we'll get close to 100.
Wow. Congratulations.
Yeah. So it feels really, really like you guys have been my besties in many ways along the ride, and just watching the product growth and everything is phenomenal to see. And it's really been helpful in utilizing as tools for my clients, for my work, for my own personal life. So I'm so epically thankful and grateful that you guys are here and doing it, and humble, and so much goddamn fun, honestly. So much fun. I want to just close out and just speaking to the people who are rocking the 40 to plus set right now, if there's any other like philosophical nugget you want to drop on them to get people to step into their capacity for greatness, as I like to say.
Here's the deal. BIOptimizers, our company, I am, Matt is, our whole team is, we're dedicated to redefining the paradigm for health, vitality, and lifespan. In the last couple of years, there have been multiple members of our team have been able to invert their genetic age. We've been able to optimize our physical performance and achieve cognitive levels that we haven't been able to achieve before. All of those items we've achieved definitively. We're on a mission to bring that to more and more people, to redefine we're just getting started. We're so excited about it. And what I'm here to encourage people out there is just figure out how to live to 2030. Live to 2030. Like, do whatever you can. Stop drinking, stop smoking, stop doing drugs, stop like reduce the downside of that you can and increase the upside to 2030, because the breakthroughs that are happening, and it's happening not just with us, but a number of other people outside of our company in different pathways. We are changing the paradigm of health and vitality, and it's exciting, and we're going to be able to live longer and stronger. I'm going to have my first kid at 52. My lady's going to have that really soon. And I feel like I get grandfather wisdom in a 30-year-old physiology, so that when I go to their graduation and when I'm 70, I'm going to feel like I'm 50.
Yeah, so epic.
And that's what we are committed to, bringing that to other people.
Yeah, and I feel that all the way to my toes with you. So lovely to spend this time with you, Wade. I love you so much. I'm so thankful to be connected to you. I'm hoping that there's a sneaky thing that I might see you in a little crossover moment in Arizona in a month or so. So I don't know if that's really happening, but hopefully, high five and some good meals. Anything else that you want to share? BIOptimizers.com is where the whole plethora of product lines is, and so much information and knowledge sharing as well. So that's all there. Yeah, I'll let people know all about the codes and things that we have after the show.
You got it. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Wade.
Yes, thank you for joining us here on Well Power. You can submit questions, learn more, shop incredible brands, and connect with me at wellpower.life, or follow me on social at biohacking.breath.cold. From comfort to courage, friends, we're doing it. Any foul language you hear is not approved by my mother.